Okay, members, we are back on the file. Members, we are going to take up SCR 88 without reference to file. The clerk will read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 88 by Senator Runner, relative to Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
Madam Speaker, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to seek your support for SCR 88. Recently, President Obama issued a proclamation declaring January to be National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. SCR 88 follows suit by declaring January to be Human Trafficking Awareness Month in the state of California. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and unfortunately, this crime is growing rapidly in our state. According to the FBI, the San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego metropolitan areas comprise 3 of the nation's 13 areas of high-intensity child sex trafficking exploitation in this country. We also know that this crime occurs in cities and towns throughout California, and that the majority of child sex trafficking victims are actually recruited from our local middle and high schools. Just last weekend at a rally in San Diego, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California, Laura Duffy, stated that in San Diego alone, human trafficking had increased by 1,000% in the past 5 years. The statistics are staggering and sobering. And this means that all of us must work together to solve this humanitarian crisis within our own state borders. And here's how: by prosecuting traffickers and solicitors of sex, working to stop demand in the first place, providing vital services and housing placements to victims, especially child victims, educating the community about how to identify and report this crime, and changing our culture that allows for the commodification of women. That's why this resolution is an important step. It encourages members of the legislature to work together to eradicate human trafficking by raising awareness in our districts, by passing legislation, and by working to allocate funding to address the problem. When I speak about this issue in my district, sharing these alarming statistics with my constituents, people are shocked to learn that this is happening in our very own communities. Victims of human trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking, are often hidden in plain sight. For example, labor trafficking victims can be found in nail shops, restaurants, hotels, construction sites, agriculture, and in people's homes. They're under the control of their captors, and even though there are typically no visible chains, they're unable to escape on their own. When these victims are rescued, it's often because a member of the public saw something unusual, became concerned, and reported it to law enforcement. I would ask you to please join me in supporting SCR 88, which helps to raise awareness of human trafficking in our state, so that more members of the public will learn how to identify victims of human trafficking and report them to authorities. I want to thank Senator Runner for authoring this resolution. And members, I will ask for your aye vote. I would like the first roll to be open for co-authors.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ms. Campos, you are recognized from your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Assembly members. Today I stand to address human trafficking, a global issue that impacts an estimated of 20.9 million people worldwide. This is an issue not only impacts the world, but one that greatly impacts California as well, reporting the highest percentage of human trafficking cases among the 50 states. Survivors of human trafficking are overwhelmingly women, 80% in the U.S., and over 80% in my area in Santa Clara County. Although many believe this problem that mainly affects adult women, this is also an issue that affects our children. 50% of all human trafficking victims in the U.S. are children, many of whom are attending school by day and being trafficked by night. Another misconception is that human trafficking is a problem that is an immigration issue, that most of them are immigrants. In California, the majority of people being trafficked, 72% of human trafficking survivors are U.S. citizens. 72%. According to the FBI, a large-scale event, which is the Super Bowl, which will be in California this year, is an area that we see that draws a lot of human trafficking. We ask that patrons that do attend this, or people in Santa Clara or the surrounding communities, that if you see anything, and if anything that is suspicious to you in the behavior, they ask that you please contact law enforcement, Santa Clara, San Francisco, San Jose, and to name a few. As I had the opportunity to sit down with a lot of these officials, and also the different police departments, and the different agencies around this, the one thing that they told me is that they're going to continue to put resources around this issue, making sure that there are billboards, public service announcements, to bring awareness to this issue. It is important that we keep bringing awareness to this issue. It's unfortunate that as we have the Super Bowl here for its 50th year in California and in our hometown in Santa Clara, that we also have to be aware that human trafficking will be a part of this. And I'm hoping that in our area, that the law enforcement and the agencies who are doing a wonderful job to make sure that they address this issue, that will not be the highlight that comes out of what is happening around the Super Bowl, but that the highlight will be that they've cracked down, they've caught these individuals, and that the individuals that are being trafficked, that they have found a path and the services so that they can move on to a better life. I ask that you support myself and my colleagues in supporting SCR 88.
Thank you, Ms. Campos. Ms. Garcia, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus in strong support of SCR 88. Awareness of human trafficking in our state is a priority for the caucus as we move forward this year. I would like to thank Senator Runner, Madam Speaker, and my colleague from San Jose for their leadership on this matter. The idea of human trafficking remains in the eyes of many as an issue that plagues only immigrant women and is found in the seediest of businesses. This is not the reality. In 2016, we know that human trafficking crosses all racial lines, blurs socioeconomic classes, and is ageless. Sex trafficking trades better than Wall Street and is a more reliable source of income. Gangs recognize they can trade a woman many times over, while drugs only once. And with the digital age, our young women are being hunted in ways like never before. The beauty of the American dream is marred by those who traffic millions of citizens and non-citizens in our workforce nationally. Many women, young and old, are forced to work in horrifying conditions without a voice to speak for themselves. SCR 88 brings light to this area, calling out awareness. I hope we, as a body, recognize this as a wake-up call as we develop strong policies to combat modern-day slavery in all forms. Thank you.
Mr. Chavez, you are recognized from your desk.
Thank you. I also rise on this issue, now probably going to come from a different perspective. This is clearly slavery. When we look at the history of our country and the formation of the idea of individual rights and freedom, human trafficking today is exactly against the principles that has made this country great. Sadly, in my experience in foreign affairs, in 1978, coming into Olongapo in the Philippines to seeing the trafficking of young girls was just an extreme shock to me when I first saw that. Later on in my career, in 1983, in Pattaya Beach in Thailand, they actually had facilities where there would be 100 young ladies dressed in different garbs with numbers on them, and European tourists and men can go in there and say, "I'd like to talk to number 85," and they'd take her out. As recent as 1990s, having gone to Korea and seeing young girls and boys traffic there. It's shocking traveling through the Far East to see it in the Philippines and in Thailand and in Bangkok and in Korea. But when I got back in government in Oceanside, North County, when I left the Marine Corps, I found out we also had the same problem. We had gangs trafficking young immigrants in the river valleys. And I got involved in a program called Standing Up for Kids, where you had young boys who were, for whatever reason, homeless on the streets that were being trafficked by just to do whatever they had to do to get a roof over their head for food. And there were people in California that would take advantage of these young people that had nowhere to go. It's shocking. Last week, as the speaker said, we had an event in San Diego, and I thought, how big is this? In San Diego County, one of the most affluent, I would say diverse, a place people love to go to, the numbers are 12,000 people are being involved in this trafficking, either in a labor force or for sexual reasons. 12,000. I had a bill, we talked about it earlier, one of the speakers said, we need to stop the demand. I had a bill, AB 733, that went through, was actually going after the perpetrator, the Johns. And sadly, some of the comments made in there, well, how do you know they're not doing it voluntarily? Members, young 12, 13, 14-year-old girls and boys do not choose that occupation voluntarily. And to have a member even hint at that and kill that bill strikes me as just somebody who's unaware of what's going on in the world. Yes, I strongly support this. I would ask all of us to strongly support this. The Republicans, we look at, we're all about freedom. This is taking away people's, not just their freedom, it's taking away their future. We got to stand up for this. We should not allow our children to be abused by Johns, by adults. Just because they have the power, just because they have the money, they should not have a safe refuge in the state of California.
Ms. Baker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also rise in support of SCR 88 and thank all of our colleagues for presenting the very basic facts about human trafficking, and particularly, Madam Speaker, for the eloquent articulation of just how big a problem it is. I would like to add two additional facets for us to keep in mind as we vote on this, and hopefully all of us co-author. And the first is human trafficking is happening everywhere in California. Gangs are using children and women in human trafficking as their new currency. They're not just dealing in drugs, they're dealing in people. But it also happens in suburban communities like the community of Danville, where just a few months ago, a major human trafficking ring was found in Danville in a suburban neighborhood of single-family homes, and people were missing the signs and missing the signals. So it's critical that we do these resolutions and we support this, but we help our constituents realize just how prevalent it is across the state and how we have to look for the signals and take action. And second area to underscore is how much more we can work together to help our law enforcement and increase penalties in human trafficking. It is amazing how little time they spend in jail and how few resources we are putting into supporting the anti-human trafficking efforts across the state. And so let's make this resolution one where we are raising awareness of just how prevalent human trafficking is in big cities, small towns, suburban, and gang areas. It is important that we work together and we increase the penalties and keep the folks who are doing this to fellow human beings in jail. I urge your support and co-authorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Ms. Olson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I, too, rise in support of SCR 88 and really appreciate the bipartisan attention that is coming to this issue. It's night and day, even just in the last 5 years that I've served in this House, between the awareness that was associated around human trafficking 5 years ago compared to today. And that means we're moving in the right direction. But I wanted to share a story about how prevalent this truly is right here in our own state of California. The Central Valley along Highway 99 and the I-5 corridor are key corridors for human trafficking in this state. And it was just a couple months ago that two young girls, two 15, 16-year-old girls at the Vintage Fair Mall in Modesto were approached by another young lady. She was about 18, 19 years old, and to invite them to a party, a simple party. We're having a party in Stockton. We're going to have a really good time, and you're just the type of people we want to be at the party. And she starts to talk to these girls about the party that's going to take place a week from them. They exchange phone numbers. They begin to text to start to build a relationship. This is a trained recruiter to build a relationship. And then they say, you know, we're really selective at the type of people who can come to this party because it's a really cool event. So can you send me a picture of each of you so that you'll be let in the door because we want to make sure you have access to this party? So they send pictures of themselves, these two young girls in Modesto. So then they keep exchanging texts. Hey, do you need a ride to the party? Oh, that would be great. I'm not sure how my parents are going to feel about me borrowing the car and going to Stockton. So these two girls are picked up for what they think is an innocent time at a party, having a good teenage time. They get driven to Stockton, and the next thing they know, the doors are locked. Their pictures have already been circulating around the internet for an entire week, and they are being trafficked and had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Fortunately, this story had a positive result because somebody knew where they were going, and so they were rescued in about a week. But not everybody's rescued. And in fact, most of these children are not rescued. And we're talking about our children, our grandchildren. This is unacceptable that this is happening anywhere around the world, much less in the state of California. And as many speakers highlighted this morning, this is the new crime that gangs are trafficking in. It's the new currency. And it's up to all of us to work together to do something about it. Whether that's bringing more shame to the industry, throwing the pictures of the Johns on billboards. We're talking about high-level professionals in our communities that are participating in this tragic, horrendous crime. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, our colleague from Marin had the Minister of Israel here, and it talked about the fact that in just 1 year, they had the number of reported incidents of human trafficking, both in the sex trade and the labor trade, go from 3,000 incidences to 0. That doesn't mean it's not happening at all in the nation of Israel, but the fact that reported incidences went from 3,000 to 0 means we can do something about it too. If we're committed to working together, to coming up with solutions and saying human trafficking is not acceptable, it will not be tolerated in any of our communities throughout the state of California. So I applaud the Speaker as well as Senator Runner for bringing this resolution before the House today, urge all of us to co-author it, and then even beyond today, to be active in our communities, supporting organizations that are trying to put a stop to human trafficking and supporting one another as we seek solutions to this horrible, tragic crime.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Mr. Cooley, you are recognized.
Colleagues, I'm rise because of the importance of this subject. You know, it is great to respond to the fact that we know that events like the Super Bowl will engender a lot of activity. The foundation has already been laid for this, and so law enforcement is responding. My own district attorney, Anne Marie Schubert, here in Sacramento County, has been a part of those conversations. It is right that we highlight the fact that there is a need for people just to see what's going on. And I think really the occasion of this resolution is a moment for us to just think about how on this floor can we energize a public policy agenda that advances this cause. Our Attorney General Harris, she has a report that has flagged this issue we've already heard from around the floor. Eyes on the problem. There's a great need at the local level in your county and my county to get people aware of what to watch for, that something is amiss, to think to call. Our colleague from San Rafael, one of the things they talked about was the way in which in Israel they are causing people to realize you may see something, if it doesn't seem right, react to it. In this body, I can tell you from my early career in the 1980s, we did not have a robust approach to child abuse. And one of the things that was done, a release of energy strategy of the California legislature, was to go into every county and find local nonprofits who had an interest in child abuse to bring forward innovative plans that they'd like to bring to bear in their county. So the program in Modoc County would look different than the program in Amador County or Sacramento County or Los Angeles County or San Bernardino County. As people looked at their own situation and developed ideas for how to respond, I think that is an agenda that this sort of resolution offers as a looking forward agenda. The homeless conversation that we are going to engage in. You know, persons who have been victimized on this have a need for a safe place to reestablish their lives from the degradation and the brokenness and the confusion. And so there's a homeless element to this, housing. And I hope we draw this into the homeless conversation we will deal with. And it is something that so many people are involved with. During MLK weekend, we had Leah Albright here in Sacramento County recognized for her work founding Bridget Stream to help young girls caught in this. Saturday night, Blue Heart International, a major event over at the Memorial Auditorium here in Sacramento County, funding responses to this. And we've had Courage House, which is addressing the sort of that housing piece. So I'm just honored to rise in support of this, but feel it is more than flag-waving and events of the Super Bowl, where it is a great peril, but it is an ongoing work that we can partner to release energy statewide, eyes on the situation, innovative programs at the county level by people who know their local need. And I just thank Senator Runner, Madam Speaker, for bringing this forward, and I look forward to our ongoing work in this area.
Ms. Grove, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two colleagues rise in support of this resolution and thank the Speaker for bringing it forward. You know, 3 out of the top 10 cities in California, or 3 out of the top 10 cities in the nation are in California that are subject to human trafficking. Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. We have 3 of the top 10 national. And I work with an organization, actually my daughter works with an organization called Magdalene Hope in Bakersfield, which is part of the Kern County Coalition Against Human Trafficking, which is an organization, several organizations that have come together to try to get girls off the street. They've established a restoration ranch in the mountains of my community, and recently they've rescued some girls right off of Union Avenue, and based on the information that these girls have provided, they're required to perform at least 20 services a day at $40 a service. One guy that controls 3 girls can make about $750,000 a year off of these 3 girls. 2 weeks ago, when my daughter was out there trying to hand out gift bags and things like that and make people aware of, the numbers that they can call and hand out stuff with Magdalene Hope, they encountered a 13-year-old girl that was brought in from Atlanta. They went out the next night to try to find her and engage police. One of the things they don't want to do is make sure that when they talk to the girls, police don't show up right away, because then there would be a conflict there and the girls wouldn't trust them. And the girl had already been moved. The 17-year-old girl that she was with said she was shipped out 2 hours after they had made contact with her. So they constantly move these girls all the time. And I would hope that, as my colleague said from Modesto, that, we've been talking about this issue for 5 years, and I realize that government moves like the pace of molasses. But we're talking about human lives, and especially young women, and some young boys, but definitely young women, that are being just in a horrific situation in life. And to rescue these girls and get them a place to be and provide housing for them and make sure that they're taken care of from a nonprofit setting would be ideal. And I think at least we could come together as a body and put harsher penalties for the Johns, because it should be illegal. It is illegal in the state of California, but there should definitely be some harsher, stiff penalties if you purchase a human being for domestic servitude, and especially for being a sex slave. So I support this resolution and thank you for bringing it forward.
Mr. Cooper, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker and members, I'll keep my comments short. I rise today in support of SCR 88. Human trafficking and sex trafficking is a major problem and growing issue here in California. I know it's very hard for many of us to think about someone abusing small children who have no voices. And I think in this coming session, we're going to have the opportunity to really make a statement and deal with these individuals. It is a growing problem and has been for many, many years. I'm glad it's coming to the forefront, and it's a healthy discussion. So I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion on the item, Madam Speaker is requesting that the first roll be open for co-authors members. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who wish to vote, adding as co-authors on SCR 88. This is for co-authors members on the resolution. The clerk will close the roll. There are 74 co-authors added. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. On the file, members, item 13, pass and retain. Items 17 through 25 also pass and retain. We are moving to file item number 26. That's AB 350. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 350 by Assemblymember Alejo, an act relating to elections.
Mr. Alejo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to present AB 350, which amends the California Voting Rights Act of 2001 to allow challenges to district-based elections that are being imposed or applied in a manner that impairs the ability of a protected class to elect candidates of their choice. Having no current state law to protect these communities, AB 350 will further the CVRA protections and ensure fair representation and accountability at the local level by correcting jurisdictions that draw lines in a way that will further marginalize minority communities. Last year, I introduced a very similar bill, AB 182, that this floor approved. But this was unfortunately one of my two bills that were vetoed. But this year, we are continuing to work on amendments to address the concerns of the governor and on the stakeholders in hopes of ensuring that the voting strength of minority communities is not diluted. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. Mr. Harper, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. I believe that this bill gives too much of an upper hand on lawyers against the local decisions that are made by our local communities. Indeed, on the elections front, our local communities are receiving the brunt, and I respectfully urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill.
Seeing no additional discussion or debate on the item, Mr. Alejo, you may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just want to correct my colleague who loves wearing many hats. But this bill is about only providing the opportunity to the courts to review boundaries that are drawn to make sure that they're not drawn in a discriminatory way. So it only gives the court the ability to review, to ensure that there's not compacting or gerrymandering, dilution of minority sections of a particular community. And that's basically what this bill provides. I think it's a fair bill to allow the courts to review to make sure that we're not violating voting rights here within our state.
With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 48, noes 22. Measure passes. File item 27, AB 67, for the purpose of amendment. Clerk will read with amendments.
Assembly Bill 67 with amendments by Assemblymember Gonzalez.
Ms. Gonzalez on the amendments.
I rise today for the purpose of amending Assembly Bill 67, the Holiday Pay Act. The amendments taken up today will limit this bill to apply only to very large retailers and grocers with over 500 employees in the state of California. Specifically, it will ensure that the meaning of retail establishment does not mean movie theaters, hotels, or amusement parks. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Waldron, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are without objection.
Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Bills out to print and back on file. File items 28 and 29 pass and retain. Moving to file item 30. That's AB 73. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 73 by Assemblymember Waldron, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Ms. Waldron, you may open on AB 73.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise today to present Assembly Bill 73, which creates an expedited 24-hour appeal process for Medi-Cal AIDS HIV patients, allowing them to promptly access the drugs they need to control their condition. Right now, patients have to go through multiple appeals processes and experience significant delays in order to receive the most suitable drugs to treat their condition. AIDS HIV is a life-threatening disease, and medical experts say that the first treatment is typically the best to get it under control. AB 73 has bipartisan co-authors, and passed Assembly Health and Appropriations Committees unanimously, is supported by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, the American Nurses Association of California, Biocom, California Chronic Care Coalition, California Healthcare Institute, Mental Health America of California, and the California Medical Association. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 76, no 0. Measure passes. File item 31, pass and retain.